You can start now.
All right. Hello, everyone. So I'm about to introduce today Mr. Ibrahim, who is going to take us on subqueries with subqueries in SQL. So first, I'm just going to speak a little bit about us. We're UrBizEdge, and we're a registered Microsoft Excel consulting, financial modeling, business intelligence, data analysis, and enterprise solutions firm. We host this webinar every Sunday to really put a spotlight on working professionals in Nigeria and show the skills and techniques that we use as professionals to analyze data, to to create business solutions, and to really put a spotlight on the working professionals of Nigeria. To so we So that's mainly what we do. Now we also host training on Excel. The next training is on the 10th of March. We host training in-depth Excel training on making dashboards and doing some business data analysis. We also host training in big data analysis, Power Query, Power Pivot, and VBA. So if there's anyone there that wants to increase their skill in any of these areas to really impress their coworkers, their bosses, and to really start learning how to automate and use Excel, all the other Excel skills that would be needed to become more efficient, to become quicker at your tasks, this is a very good course for you to take. So we're starting that one on the 3rd of March. Now, a lot of people have started researching into Power BI. Now, Power BI is a business intelligence tool that allows people to create very interactive dashboards and to analyze all different aspects of a business. So anyone that really wants to really get their edge in the marketplace, to really improve and to really improve their skill set, to really widen their skill set, and increase to really add more to their portfolio, to give them a better edge in the market. This is also a very good course for you to take as well. Power BI is becoming increasingly popular. Plenty of businesses now require you to learn Power BI, so it's a very good course for you to take as well if you really want to upskill yourself. Now, we also offer Python for data analysis. Python is a very flexible, very flexible programming language that everyone uses, and a lot of businesses, a lot of computer scientists require people to know Python, even if it's just a little bit. And in case maybe you're not required to learn Python in your business, it does add to yourself as well. And there's a lot of different things you can do on Python that you might not be able to do with Power BI, with Power Automate, and also it might be very difficult to do with using VBA. Python is a very easy language to learn. It might be difficult at the start, but it will add to you later in your career. So taking us today is Ibrahim Ogunbiyi, and this guy is a very skilled data analyst with expertise in Python, SQL, and Power BI. He has a proven track record of deriving actionable insights from data. He possesses a very strong technical writing ability, and he has experience in training and teaching individuals about data-related concepts online. So there's no better person to take us today on subqueries in SQL, and hopefully we can learn something new about SQL, about subqueries, and really follow along on this 1-hour webinar. So I'm going to pass it on to Ibrahim, and I'll let him take it from here. So, hello, Ibrahim.
Hello, Chidi. Let me just share my screen.
No problem.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we can see your screen now. It's great.
Okay. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you're joining us from. So my name is Ibrahim Ogunbiyi, like which he has said earlier. So today I'll be walking you through about subqueries in SQL. So this subqueries is like one of those concepts you need to know if you want to polish your SQL skill. If you want to move forward with SQL, these are like core concepts you should know because they help you, derive your insight or get to your action as very fast as possible. So like the way, no need to like introduce myself much again. Chidi has done that. So so now before we get into like some of the things about maybe the types of subqueries, when to use subqueries and all that. Firstly, we need to know like what is a subquery, like and then before you can say you want to know what a subquery is, you have to first start from like the root word, which is query. We all know that query is like a statement that is used to retrieve data from a database. So like, let's say when you hear the word query, it means like you're finding something, you want to get something from a database. And then query, they normally begins with like the select clause, which can also contain clauses such as the from, where, group by. So now as the name subquery implies, when you say something is sub, that is, it means like you have like something under something. So now in that case, you can say a subquery is like you have a query placed inside another query. So and then one thing is they say a subquery is termed the inner query that is used to generate results for the outer query or main query. So what this means essentially is like you have like a small query, like you have like a subquery, you have a query, like a subcategory of a query. Now you have a query that is generating answer for another query. So that kind of query, the one that is generating answer for that other query is termed subquery. And then you can also call it inner query. And then the one that has, like is collecting information from that other query is called the main or outer query. Now, so the main essence of subquery is that we use it to perform operation on a subset of data. So the results generated from operations and they used to serve as input for the outer query. So what this implies is when you have like a subquery, that is, you have a query inside another query. So that query is used to generate results for like the outer query. So that's the essence of subquery. When you hear subquery, you should know that a query that is generating an answer for an other query that you'll be passing in. So now there are different kind of subquery. We have the single row subquery, we have the multiple rows subquery, we have correlated subquery, we have multiple column subquery, and we have nested subquery. So let's take one of these one after the other, then we'll move into doing the practical session on each of these type of subquery. So firstly is the single row subquery. So when you hear a single row subquery, one thing you should know is it is a query that generates a single value. We've said subqueries are inner query, right? That is a query that you have that will generate results for another query. So when you say something is single row subquery, that is from the word single row, single means like one, it is generating a single row of value as a result. That is, that result that the subquery is generating is just one single value that will be passed into the outer query. So now we'll see what all these things, we'll see the application of all these things in the practical session. But like I just want to go in details about everything, then we'll start bringing it like when we are doing the coding aspect of it. So now they said so single subqueries are frequently used to compare values or observation in main query or to filter values in main query. So what we'll see what this actually how this implies. But one thing you need to do is, let's say you want to filter a value. Now, for instance, let's say I have a query that is giving me average score. The first, like, let's say I have a query. Okay, select average from, let me say, student score. So that's a subquery. That average, since you are saying average average of all score. That is, it is generating one single value. So now you want to use it to filter maybe another data set that, okay, find all these students that are what? That they have their own score greater than the average. You know, you've gotten the average from a subquery. So you are using that subquery to filter that outer subquery. So that's what single row subquery is. And as well, they say you can use it to compare values. Let's say now, for instance, you want to do something like we do in statistics. Then let's say you want to calculate all these like standard deviation, the upper part, the numerator part of standard deviation, that you have like scores of students. Then you have the average score beside. You now say x minus x bar, stuff like that. So that's what single subquery is using. When you want to use single subquery, you use it when you want to compare values from the outer query, or you want to use it to filter values in the main query. So now there are two common subqueries in this category. That is, it's something that we've talked about. We'll see how all these things is actually done. So in this type of single row subquery, the subquery can either fall in the select clause, or it can either fall in the where clause. That is, for the select clause, we'll see how that goes, and for the where clause, we'll see how that goes. So what the select clause is basically used to do the one that will compare the values, while the where clause is used to filter values. We'll see how that works later in the practical session. So they said for the where clause, we make use of operators such as like the comparison operator, such as greater than, less than, equals to, etc. So now moving on to the next type of subquery. We've talked about the single row subquery, the second one being the multiple row subquery. So now on the other hand, from the word multiple, that is, instead of that subquery to generate one single value, this one can generate multiple values or multiple rows. So they are also used to like filter the main query. The application of a multiple row subquery is basically used to filter the main query. So they have different kind of categories as well. This subquery can belong in the from clause, can also belong in the where clause. But when you want to use it in the where clause, instead of you saying you want to use comparison operators such as greater than or equals to, you make use of operators such as in, not in, any, all, etc. Some stuff like that. So another type of subquery which is another type of subquery is the correlated subquery. So now, what this does is we'll see how this actually works. This is more kindly used when you want to avoid the use of complex joins and all that. So they said a correlated subquery is the one that depends on the value of the outer query. In other words, subquery result is executed for each row in the main query, and the subquery references the value of each main query row in its calculation. What correlated subquery means is like this kind of subquery. It will reference each row in the main query to perform its operation. That's what correlated subquery. We'll see how this actually works, because seeing how it works in real life will help us better understand what we're actually doing. So the next type of subquery is, we said we have about 5 types of subquery. We have the single row subquery, we have the multiple row subquery, we have the correlated subquery, we have the multiple column subquery, and we have the nested subquery. So this multiple column subquery is just like the multiple rows. So instead of this one, it will generate the multiple columns. All this like single row, multiple row will only have one column that will contain multiple rows. But these multiple columns, you can have different kind of as many as possible columns to filter out like the main query. And then the last type of subquery is one they call nested subquery, which means you're having a subquery also inside another subquery. So this one is kind of complex depending on what you want to achieve. Now moving on to when to use subqueries. As we said earlier, let's say you want to compare multiple values with a single value. That's when you use subquery. And as well, let's say you want to perform things like filtering. Let's say you want to filter values, values in the main query. That's when you think of, okay, you want to use subquery. And as well is Subquery reduces the need for writing complex joins or too much of code. So that's when things like correlated subquery comes in. We'll see how this works actually. So now, what are the guidelines for subqueries? Like, what are the guidelines when using subquery? Firstly, is when you want to use a subquery, that subquery that you are using, you have to make sure you enclose it inside a bracket, that is into a parenthesis. Because if you don't, it will throw an error when you are running it on the SQL engine. It will think maybe this is another type of query. But you having it inside a parenthesis will ensure that, okay, this is a subquery. And as well, when you want to perform single row subquery, that is when the subquery that you want to achieve is a subquery that is generating just single row, you should make use of single row operators. That is, you should make sure that you are using operators that are aligned to single row, operators that are aligned to what performing single row operator. That is, operators that allows you to compare just single row, like all this greater than. You can always say just say greater than 2, greater than 5. So when you want to use multiple row subquery, use operators that can be used to get multiple values. Like for instance, now you have a subquery that is generating multiple values. You cannot use greater than to compare values, but rather you say you want to use like operators such as in, not in, and all that. And as well, they said the last thing is a subquery must always appear on the right of an operator. So, this is like, let's say you have greater than, you have to make sure that like you are comparing the subquery is at the right hand side. Not that you have like a subquery first, and say maybe subquery less than 2. It will generate an error. We'll see how that works. And as well, we said the last thing being, keep in mind that the result of the subquery will be used in the outer query. So this is just like a thing to remember, that like whatever results you are generating from the subquery will be used in the outer query. So if your subquery is not right, the result of the main query as well too, or the outer query too will not be right. So now let's just go into seeing how subquery works in SQL. So we're actually going to moving into each and every one of them. So what I have here is like I have a table which I've just created. This table, what this table does, it contains the student ID. It contains the name of students, their departments, and their score. So by the way, I'm making use of what's it called? Of PostgreSQL. So for people using SQL frameworks such as MySQL, you can follow along. For SQL Server, it's just a little bit different, but like the syntax as well, the query, it's something you can use. So like I said, this table contains student ID, student name, department, and score. So firstly, I want to have run this query to generate the rows, like every rows that is present in this data, in this table. As we can see, like for the first record, we have student names such as Ibrahim, is a computer science student, and his score is 80. So now let's move into what we said firstly about what's the first type of subquery, which is the single row subquery. As we said single row subquery are used to return single row or value, and they are used to compare values or filter values in the main query. So now let's see how this works. So now let's say now, for instance, I want to get students in which their score is greater than average. That is, I want to get students in which their score is greater than average. With this, I can use subquery. That is, from there, well, let's say now, you as a data analyst, they told you, okay, just give us, we need students in which, okay, you have this student record of, let me say, Faculty of Science. Give me student record in which their score is greater than the average. So from that, you should think of that kind of techniques that you're going to use is filtering. So when you're filtering, you should know you are making use of things like subqueries. So now, firstly, you need to get, okay, they told me as a data analyst, I should find students in which their record is greater than average. So firstly, like that, you think, okay, I need to get the average score. before I can say how to perform filtering. So now, for instance, like normally as we would have done, we said, okay, from this place, let's say I want to select all students' score, right? From where score, we are dealing with the average score. But unlike you might not be giving the average score. You might have, okay, let's say they gave you things like, okay, they told you, okay, find students where their record is greater than 60. This place from here like this now, you've been given the value. But unlike this place, they tell you find student records where their score is greater than average. Firstly, like that, you need to calculate the average score. So in this kind of stuff, that's when subquery will come into place. As we can see, this is like the subquery. This thing in brackets here is the subquery because it is the one that we are using to filter this here. This part here is the outer or the main query because we are using this subquery to filter the main query. So firstly, we'll get the average score. And I will say this is a single row subquery because if you run this, it will just give you a single record. That is a single row. So now you want to find out students whose score is greater than average. You've gotten the average, then where score is greater than average. So from here, you've gotten, this is how a single row subquery will look like. So if you run this query now, you have things like, this is the result here. So with students in which their own score is less than average, they have been filtered out. As we can know, we said initially, as you can see initially, the total records in this data set, in this table was 11, but now like this, after we've run this query here, we now have about 7 of them, which is because we filtered out those people that their score is not greater than the average. Now, this kind of stuff like now, this is we'll filter. So let's check how to do the comparison as well. So now let's say, okay, they tell you you want to just compare and see by the side. Okay, you have students record, but you just want to compare by the side. You want to have the average score by the side. So that means you want to do something like comparison or single row. So now let's say I want a scenario whereby I have I want to have like the score of every student in that department, and I want to compare their average score. That is, I just want to have the average score beside each individual score. So that's when we said the single row subquery, you can either have it in the where clause or you can also have it in the select clause. So now, for instance, so when you want to perform something like comparison, the single row subquery will be, you put it in the select clause. You understand? But when you want to do things like filtering, you put the single row subquery in the where clause. So now, so let's say I want to, like I said, we want to have the average score of each student by the side from students score. So firstly, as we said, subquery, you need to enclose it in the parentheses. So now if you run this kind of query now, you see that we will have the average score beside. As we can see, this is the average of the entire students. So now we're having things like the average score is about 73.36. We could have rounded it up as well, but we can see that we are kind of doing something like comparison. Okay, we see that, okay, from here, let's say we now want to know the difference. Let's say you want to do things like difference. Maybe you cannot do city. Okay, you want to find the difference between the score of Ibrahim from the average. So that's when you do things like single row subquery. Now moving on to the next type of subquery that we talked about, we said we have the multiple row subquery, which is used to return multiple values, and as well they are used for things like filtering. But we said when you want to use them, you have to make use of you can have them in the from clause, you can either have them in the where clause, but when you want to use them, you make use of the in operator. As we've known earlier, that see all these type of operator, all these operators like less than, greater than, they are just used to compare just single value. But in SQL, we have that operation that we can use to compare multiple values. Let's say you want to check values like multiple values. That's when you use things like in, any, not in, all, stuff like that. So now let's say now, for instance, we want to get students personal information whose score is greater than the average. Look at this. Okay, what now is like, we actually have two tables here. I have two tables. Let me just check my schema. I have two tables. One which is, the first one is student score, and the second one is student record. So what I just, from this, the thing is, the business problem is they told us to find student record. Let's first run the student record to see how that looks like. Select all from student records. So student record, the one we'll be working with is just the student score, but this is the student record. We have things like the student ID, the student name, the student state, the student age. So they are telling us to find the personal information of all these students whose score is greater than average. Now look from here now like this now. This is the code, this is the query that we want to use to achieve this kind of results. Now we can see that we have like, thank God we talked about nested subquery. We can see that we have like two subqueries. We have the first one, which says select average score from student record. We have another one here, which says select student ID from students where score is, and we have the outer one. This is the outer one. This is the outer or the main query. All these ones are ignore query. Now breaking the business problem into bits. Yeah, we were told to find the student PII, that is the student personal information, where their score is greater than average. Firstly, you need to say, okay, you'll be giving the first business problem is you want to find students whose score is greater than average. Thank God we've done something like that, which is this. We have it already here, which says select student score where their score is greater than average. So this is a subquery again. This is a subquery. This is the main query. But now we are being told to find the personal information of all those students that their score is greater than average. But these student records, the personal information, they are in another table. So firstly like that, but one thing we can use to connect those tables, that is one column, the two tables have in common that we can use to link them together is the student ID. Because from the student record, we have things like student ID, and the student score too, we have student ID. Now, taken from this, what you just need to do is, since we say we are working with multiple row subquery, firstly like that, you want to get, let me just pick this. I'll pick this. So from here, which says select student ID. So what you want to do first is you want to get those student ID that their score is greater than average, which you've done here. If you run this, it will only just give you student ID. As you can see, this is a multiple row result, because this is a multiple row subquery. Firstly, we've gotten okay, this is like a multiple row. But this result here, we want to use it as a subquery for another main query, because our main query, our target is to get those student records. We are not interested in their ID only. We want to get their name, their location, their age. But this is like a result. You know, we said this is a query already. This is a subquery. This is a main query. But this thing here we have here that we call a main query is also a subquery for the main query that we want to use. I hope we understand what we are trying to, like, let's say now, this now is a, we've gotten the student ID, but this result that we have here, we want to feed it into another type of a main query. Now from here, since we've gotten the student ID, we've gotten those student ID, but the names and the location and the age of those students is inside another table. Now we can make use of a multiple row subquery approach like that. Since we've gotten the student ID, what we can just do is, okay, say we want to just, since we want to find those students' name, we can just make use of a multiple row subquery, which will be, the main query now will be, want to get everything from student record, from student records, here student ID. So now the in that we are using is used to indicate that like this thing here, this thing, because we said when you want to make use of, when you are dealing with multiple rows, you make use of in. So this once we've gotten this student ID, which we've gotten here, right? We now said select all from student record, where student ID in. So what this thing will do is like this main query will check this student record and find student ID, this main query here, because this is our main query that we said this main query has student ID. Now what it will do is it will check student ID, that their ID is in the what, in the subquery. Now this is now is a nested subquery because we have subquery, this is the main query. So it will find student ID in that subquery, in the result of those subquery. So now that's why we are making use of in. So this student ID now, it will check students that have their ID in that subquery. So now if we run this now, we'll see that the answer that will generate is we have those student record now. So unlike this one before that, we just got this this first one, the filtering one that we did, that we just add what's it called? We just add the students and the department, but we don't have their personal information. But like this one now, we want to just get, we are finding the student's record, that is their name, their location in that what's it called, in the subquery. So I hope we understand that. So after we've run it like this now, we'll see that we have the student's name, their state, and their age. Now moving to the next type of subquery that we've discussed, the one we said correlated subquery, which we said it uses the row in the main query as reference for the subquery. Now let's see now, for instance, you are given a case whereby you are told to find, you are told, sorry, I didn't write the business problem here. So now let's say you are given a case whereby you are told to find from this now, let me run this, select all from student record. So from this department name, we have like, let me just get something like this. Let me get the distinct departments that are present in this table. Sorry, students. So let me just get the distinct departments that are present in this. So we have 4 departments in that student record table. Now, what the business problem is trying to tell us that we should do is we want to find students whose score is greater than the average in each department. I hope you understand that business problem. Unlike this first one that says find students whose score is greater than the average score. This one that we did first was for the entire students, irrespective of their department. So just find the average score of all those students and find the students whose score is greater than the average. But like this one, we are told to find students whose score is greater than the average, the department's average score. That is for each department, the average score of students in each department. Find students whose score is greater than those average. Now, so in this kind of scenario, would we can make use of things like subquery. Now, firstly, before we move into correlated subquery, I want to show us how we can get it using joins first. So firstly, like we've said, before we see how the relevant of subquery is. So this is something like a join that I've created. I created this using join. For every one of us here that are familiar with CTE, common table expression. So this is just like, let me just pick out this. So what this does first is, from, like we said, the business problem is to find students' record, students whose score is greater than average. So from here, we have select department name, their average score, that is from each department. What we are doing here is we are finding the department, we are grouping the data set, the table by the department, and we are finding the average score of the department. So now if we run this now, you can see that, like, for computer science, the average score is 79, biochemistry 78.3, industrial chemistry 78, microbiology 73. So now I want to show us how we achieve it first. Normally we can achieve this using joins, right? But we want to show you how correlated subqueries too can work. So we've gotten the average score of the department. Now, what we can do is we can use joins to get this kind of business problem. So from here, we have select all from students, inner join results using department name. Firstly, so what this thing that we've gotten here, I've encapsulated it as a CTE. For us, that CTE is just a way to like modularize your code, so that probably it will be easy for you to read. Let's say you don't want to put something like this selects this one I did here, this subquery. I don't want to put it into something like this. Yeah, that it will, this kind of code will not look complex, but you can make use of CTE to like make your code clean and all that. So I've encapsulated it as a CTE already. I named the CTE results. So now from here, from what we have. So I said select all from students. Since we've created this thing as a CTE, that is, we've created it as a CTE, then now we can now join. If we join the data, we join this table, this select all from students, which is the initial table. We joined everything. We now join it with this CTE that we've created using. We can either, if the what's it called, the column name are the same thing, you can make use of using function or using using function in, instead of you saying you want to use on results dot department name equals to student score dot department name. So you can make use of using as well, if you don't want to make use of. But that one, in that case, the name must be the same thing. But in this case, if I had said this select department name as I cannot make use of using the name because the name are wrong. I have to make use of on result dep equals to student score. So for that, when I've joined it and I've used the column that I want to use to tell the SQL engine that this table are related, now from there, I can now find the score of each student that are greater than the average score from that for each department. So if we run this now, let's say we run this. Oh, sorry, this place type changed. So now, as you can see, sorry, As we can see, we now have the result has been filtered out, but this was with join. For computer science, it's filtered as students whose score is greater than average. For computer science department, the average score is 79.25. So like this now, Ibrahim has 80 is greater than. Likewise, Joel had 90 is greater than. We have another person, Gbadebo is greater than. But for like the microbiology, the average score is 73.67. And we have students whose record is is greater than the average score for that one. So now, this kind of scenario, we can achieve it using correlated subquery. We can see the code for correlated subquery. Now, let's move into how this correlated subquery works. So, firstly, what it does is, like I said, we said it references the value from the outer query and use it in its calculation. So you can think of it as something like a loop that, okay, it will check from the outer query, evaluate it, then run. So it runs row by row, you understand? Unlike other type of subquery, like single row subquery, all these single row subquery, multiple row subquery, the subquery will have run first. You now use it to filter the main query. But like correlated subquery, it works row by row. Okay, to check it will reference the first row of the main query, evaluate it. Once it has performed the calculation, it moves to the next next row, do the same thing like that. So that's how correlated subquery works. Now let's see how it works here. We said firstly, this is the subquery. Is correlated subquery here. What we want to do, we said we want to get students whose score is greater than the average in each department. So we have the select average score from student score, right? This is the subquery here. This is the subquery. We have select average score from student score. We alias it as SS. So what it does now is now check, okay, where SS the department name, this student score, it will have the department, right, is equals to, with alias, this our main query too. This is our main query here. Select star from student score as S, where score is greater than, we've alias it as S. So it will now go and check, okay, firstly, from select average score from student score as SS, where SS the department name is equals to S does department name. That is what it will do is it will find the average score of each department, right? For that department, like let's say now, for instance, this is the data, this is the table here. It will go from computer science, it will pick computer science first, find the average score for Department of Computer Science. Now compare this computer science with the average score of the computer science. So it will loop through like that, continue to do so till it reach the final record in the data set. So that's what it does is, as you can see that it will take out the first it will reference the departments. It's referencing the value, as I said here, that where SS the department name is equals to S, this main query department name. So it will check the department name of the main query, find the average value, compare it with the first record, move to the second one to compare. So that's how correlated subquery actually works. Now, moving on to the next type of subquery that we've talked about. We said we have another one, which is the multiple column subquery. We've seen how nested subquery works when we're doing the multiple row, because this is a nested subquery. This is a subquery inside another subquery. You understand? So that's how nested subquery works. So now checking the last type of subquery that we are going to work on, which is the multiple column subquery. As we said, that multiple column in its own sense, it is used to find, it is used to generate multiple columns, or like multiple rows that generate multiple rows. Multiple rows will generate single column and multiple rows, but multiple column will generate multiple rows and multiple columns. So the business problem is find students who scored the lowest in each department. He said, find students who scored the lowest in each department. So what this does is, so this is what's it called? This is the subquery here. Let me pick it out and run what we have there. So select department mean score. If we run this, what we did here was we group by each department and find the mean score, right, of the department. So now that's for that. What this now does is it will now check. This is the main query here. It said select all from students where department, because we want to filter out multiple columns. We want to find the students for each department, the student that scored the lowest score for each department. So we have to make use of two parameters. We're making use of the department and the score. So from here, from the main query, the main query will just generate all the entire students. But we want to just filter it to find out that in all those entire students, just find the departments and the lowest score. So what this does, it will go there, because we are this type of subquery, as we can see, it's a multiple column subquery. The first one being the department name, the second one being the main value for each department. The main value for each department. So that's for that. So what it will do is now this year we are finding the departments. It will go to, okay, it will bring out those departments, because as we've known that each student in the data in the table has their own department, right? So it will check the department and check it inside this place, inside this main query, and the score. So from the main query, the entire table, it will just filter out students whose score is the same thing as the mean score. Whose score is the same thing as the mean score, and as well the department name. So that's how that multiple column subquery works. As you can see here from here, that from the department name, it checks in inside this department name and the score. As we can see, this is the student's record, the student ID being for industrial chemistry. We have industrial chemistry. For industrial chemistry, we have Mustafa, and the mean score is 78. So Mustafa was the student that scored the lowest in the department of industrial chemistry. While for biochemistry, Yusuf scored the lowest. While for microbiology, Tomiwa and Tolu scored the lowest for computer science. So that's for that works. So what this another type of thing here. This one is just a multiple row subquery. Is actually, this one is just an example of that tells us how any works. We've seen how in works, right? So what this is just is an equivalent of it's showing us how any, because as we've said in multiple rows, when you are dealing with multiple rows, you can make use of in, not in, any, all. So let's just walk through how this any works. Is from here, it's saying select student's name from student's record where score is greater than 80. When we run this now, it will just give us the name of students that their name is give us student name whose score where their score is greater than 80. So we have Joel and Muritado. being those student name. So what this any is just is from here that says select all from student's name, from student score, that is all those names, right? Where student's name is greater than any. What this any does it evaluates to see if one or many of all these subqueries, many of all those values is true. You know, we are working with student name here. Student name, which are Ibrahim, Taiwo, Noreen, Joel, Mustafa. So it's going to, what it's going to do is like, okay, it will check, because we are dealing with students, Abi, it will check maybe student name. Like for instance, this one that generated Joel and, you know, this one generated Joel and Muitado. So it will now take firstly from Ibrahim, because we are dealing with student name. You know, student name is alphabet, right? It will check first that, okay, Ibrahim, is Ibrahim greater than any of all these record? That is, this one generated Joel and what's it called? And Muitado. And since we are dealing with alphabet, it will just check in terms of ranking. Is I greater than J or is I greater than N? So since that one is not correct, I is not greater than J. I mean, is I J K? I think JK. So I is not greater than J, right? And I is not greater than N. So it will discard this one. Moving on to Taiwo. Okay, Taiwo is greater than J and is greater than N. So it will include it. Noreen, N is greater than J and is also greater than N. It will include it. So likewise, Joel too. Joel is greater than, okay, Joel is not greater than J because we didn't say greater than or equals to. Joel is not greater than J and J is not greater than M. So it will include Mustafa, Muritado, it will include Yusuf, it will not include Abiba, it will not include Tomiwa, it will not include Gbadebo and Tolu. So what any does it will check this where clause from there. It will check maybe that value that you want to compare. Is it greater than? You can use equals to, you can use less than, depending on what you want to achieve. So it will check maybe one of those or one or multiple values in that subquery. One thing that thing that you want to compare with it is any of it true? If it is true, it will bring out the results. You understand? But like let's say now, for instance, you are working with odd. Like we said, we have like 3 operators and 4 operators. We have in, not in, any, and odd. But let's say you are working with odd. All you will check maybe, okay, from here that we said Ibrahim. Is Ibrahim greater than J? Is not greater than M2, so it will discard it. But for any, let's say out of this subquery, this the result of this subquery, we had like Gbadebo and Muritado. Now let's say we had Gbadebo and Muritado. You know, G and M, but that any, like we said it will check maybe one or 2 or more values is true or false. So let's say I was now working with Ibrahim. Ibrahim is not greater than Muritado, but it is greater than Gbadebo. I is greater than G, so it will print out Ibrahim. So that's how any works. So if you run this now, as we've said, you see that Ibrahim will not be part of okay, because I've changed this thing to equals to. We make use of I think we make use of greater than before. So if you run this now, like as we said, so this is the answer for that. So that's everything under how subquery works. So thank you very much. I don't know if we have questions. Hello.
Hello, Chidi.
Right here. All right, so that's everything. Thank you so much for the webinar. And I'm going to wait a few minutes to see if anyone has any questions that they want to tell Mr. Ibrahim. So
check the chat box. Someone has sent a question there.
Oh, I'm checking the chat right now. And someone says, can we do the same thing with weights and biases?
I didn't get you.
Mr. Abraham always asked, can we do the same thing with weights and biases?
With weight.
And biases.
It's weight and biases.
Yes.
Like, I don't understand.
Maybe if he was here, he could elaborate on his question.
So make him a speaker now. Ayodeji.
Oh no, Abraham. And
Abraham,
Ayodeji
okay.
is raising his hand.
That's Abraham. I don't think Abraham is still in the call. So I made Ayodeji a speaker. So Ayodeji, come meet yourself. Okay, Abraham
Okay.
also.
Hi, everyone. So,
Right.
yeah, thank you, Ibrahim, for the presentation. Could you please go over? I didn't understand the explanation of how any and all works again. I got confused around because we are working with names in the case that you're explaining, and I didn't understand how the alphabetical ranking is what is being used by the any or all operator instead of using the average score. So I don't know if you could explain it in a different way, because I heard what you said, but I just couldn't think it through. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me try and find another scenario. Instead of me using name, let me make use of student ID. Can you all see my screen?
No, not yet.
Okay, I'm coming. So can you see my screen now? Okay, so
yes.
So instead of me making use of student name, let me make use of student ID. So now, what this does is, firstly, from here, this selects student ID from student score, where score is greater than 80. For me, let me run this subquery. So we have student ID, which is 8 or 5. Now, from here, from the outer query, what this does that we said select all from student score, where student ID is greater than any of these things. What this does is, from here, if I run this this main query, so now taking from, the first record here is Ibrahim, which the student ID is 11. So it will check from, just know, like I said, 11, right? Let me run the subquery now. We have 8 or 5. So this student ID that we said where student ID, firstly, the first record is Ibrahim Abi. The student ID of Ibrahim is 11. So it will check maybe any of these results from the subquery, which is 8 or 5. Is that student ID greater than it? Okay, 11 is the student ID of Ibrahim. Truly, Ibrahim is greater than 8. 11 is greater than 8. 11 is greater than 5. So the answer for that is true. But now, let's say now, for instance, I brought a scenario whereby in this select student ID from student score, where score is greater than 80, the result was 12 and 5. From the initial main query, 11 was Ibrahim was the first student, Abi, and his ID is 11. But now checking from here, 11 is greater than 8, but it's not greater than 12. So you understand? But at least since one of it is true, it will pass it. But if none of those things that is checking is true, is not true, it will not display it. I hope you understand what I mean. Like,
okay, so the function is like a check.
Yeah. So it checks if the student ID is greater than any of those student ID.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Chidi, there's still other questions in the chat box.
Yes, I see it there. So from Adioti, what really makes exist condition differ from in-clause. So would you like to answer that one?
Okay. So what exist use, what they use exist for is basically you use exist when you want to compare values in one table to another table. So let's say, for instance, you have let's say for instance you have, I don't know how I can represent this in this, but there are kind of cases whereby, let's say you want to check values in one table. Does it occur in another table? Like, or let's say, does it occur in another query? You understand? Like, let me see if I can represent this. So we just show how that works. So let me see, for instance, I have a case where I want to get students record from students record. Students record. So from students record exists. I don't know if this will work. Select okay. Let me do it like this. Let me say I want to get name from student score, where what's the name of student score, where score is greater than 80. So let's see how this works. So this is a table. This is one table, and this is another table. So we want to check maybe the name of all these students exist in this another table. Let me run this first. Okay. Oh, sorry. I want to check the column name. Okay, student name. So what we, as we can see, what exist does is just, what this does is you are just using it to check maybe one record in one particular table exists in another table. But for like you are using it basically to do things like filtering. You understand? And there could be some cases whereby the thing is like they kind of work the same way. You understand? You could either use what's it called? You can either use in or exist. But in that case, what this will do is the record, the column that you want to get must be the same thing from the column that you want to use for your subquery. That is like this. Now we have select student name from student record. We are only getting student name here, and from this place we are getting student name. But like, let's say you are not doing things like student name, maybe their score. So it's going to throw an error from this kind of for this kind of, because the column name. Okay, I think I just got this like this now. So I was thinking this is going to throw a, okay, it was this piece I was saying. So I don't know. Let me see if it would work. Yeah. So for that, like, there's what I would say is like there's not really much of a difference, but it depends on how you place your query. Being like this, I basically make use of in to check maybe one record is in another record. So that's for that. I hope I've been able to like answer that kind of question.
Okay, I think that was, yeah, I think you did. And it was very well explained. So is there, yeah, no problem. She said, thank you. So is there anyone else with any other questions? I don't think so. So that was a great webinar today. It was very impressive, Ibrahim. I learned a lot. And you're a recurring, I don't think this was your first webinar, but I'll still ask you the same questions anyways. Maybe some things have changed since your last one. But what would you recommend to anyone starting off in data science? Maybe with almost anything. Maybe since you're already here, maybe somewhere else that, how do I describe it? Maybe explain the challenge you're facing today in terms of data analysis, maybe a situation or something that's complicated and how you pass through it. Maybe someone here would be facing the same thing right now. I won't want to ask you the same question over and over again.
You're saying I should
if you can, maybe if you can think of anything that's somewhat difficult in data analysis that you had to face through at the moment, and maybe explain it. Because I think you've been here before, so you've already answered the previous questions we normally ask. So maybe instead of saying how you would start off with data analysis, is there something you're facing in your career right now that you're just like, okay, this is how I'm getting over it, and the next person who wants to get over the same hurdle, this is how I'd advise them to do so. Is there anything like that?
So for that, what I'll say in terms of like what I'm facing currently, because it's something like I'm still facing currently, even I don't know, maybe I'll still face it tomorrow. Is this issue of things like imposter syndrome. You know, when you have when you get to a place whereby people are talking and you're just feeling like you don't know anything, like you know, you're having that kind of thoughts that what are you doing with your life? Because this thing is actually things that like it has broke me down seriously. Like a couple of weeks ago, I've not been doing anything because I just feel like I don't know anything at all, because I feel like what's the essence, like, because I thought about myself that I've been playing, you know, sometimes I'll check my WhatsApp, or I just feel like, you know, just breaking my phone because I'm depressed. I feel like I'm not doing well. But then, you know, they'll just you know, you just have to like pick yourself back and think, okay, even if you are saying you don't know anything, there are some people that at least that you even know more than them, right? You still have like more knowledge about them, more than them. You know, in this world, there will always be people that will know better than you. So, and there's one thing that I love, which I used to do to overcome that thing is, now let's say now, for instance, I check LinkedIn and I saw something online that I know that I don't know already. You understand? Okay, I know that I don't know this thing. What I'll do is I'll screenshot that thing. And thankfully enough, I'll see that like maybe during my course of learning, I later learned that stuff. I will not check back and see that thing that I've screenshotted. Sometimes I'll just laugh at myself that, wow, Ibrahim, look at this thing. This thing was even simple. But then when I didn't know it, I was like thinking, would I know this thing? Would I not know it? But after I know it, like I check that I can solve it. I just, oh, thank God. Because there's one, let me share you like one experience there. Yes, when I still started my career in data stuff, then I was doing things like when I just started my data career fresh then. So there's this job then I applied to that what they told us to do was sentiment analysis. Then I didn't know thing about, I don't know what sentiment analysis is. What he just gave me was that, like, you know, me, I'm just familiar with having numbers in my table, in my, what's it called? Let me do pandas. And then I use Python a lot. Let me just do PD research. We start calculating the summary statistics and all that. I noticed that everything was just text. And the problem, the project was like, okay, from the interview, they just told me, take this data sets. It's a tweet about, what's it called? About, it's tweet on, like, they said it was tweet, they scraped the data from Twitter, like as a tweet from like that I should derive insights from it and visualize it using Tableau. When I saw that stuff, I was like, what's this? Like, I don't know it. Immediately, I told the interviewer, the hiring manager, that, so like for now, I don't know this thing. I cannot do it, because I was just given 8 hours to do it then. And then I was like, I wish I could have, you know, I could have said I want to try. But then I knew that even if I want to try, not that I just gave up instantly. One day imposter syndrome took me, like, I was like, I can't do this thing. But later during my journey, when I learned, after the interview, I searched, I knew that this thing was sentiment analysis. Okay, then, so during then, I was having this goal that this sentiment analysis, I will learn it. So after I learned that sentiment analysis, I was able to like do stuff like sentiment analysis. I went back and checked the interviewer project that they gave me then. I was just laughing that, well, that's life for you. You know, we keep learning every day. So in imposter syndrome, you just have to, you know, pick everybody. There are always cases whereby people will know more than you. We are not an island of knowledge. So, but the thing is, like, just look at yourself that this is you. And then they used to say something, learning is slow. You know, learning journey is very, 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 very slow. Just move at your own pace. You will get there. So that's for like that.
Yeah, that's great. I can't remember the proper name for it, but I think like anyone who's in software or building programs face this a lot. It's a fallacy, but I can't remember the name. But like they say, people who write up codes or do programs, that they never feel like they know enough. Maybe that's because we always tend to like outsource or grab information from everywhere to make a product, and then we don't feel like we still know enough. We don't feel like we're proper. I won't say professionals, because we are, but we don't feel like we're at the level where we should be. Where realistically, like, you know, as you said, you put your head down and you study that how to do that sentimental analysis, I believe, and you did it well. You studied it well, and now you know something that you didn't know a few weeks before, and you know that's just another step forward. So thank you for that, Neil. Thanks a lot for this webinar, and thanks for coming on. I'd say that's almost everything, unless anyone else has any other questions they want to give. We can then finish up.